A smartphone in a suspect's pocket continuously records their every move. But what happens when AI-assisted spoofing allows that device to lie with perfect, realistic precision? In a modern fraud investigation, the digital location footprint you seize might actually be a sophisticated, custom-built fabrication. Welcome to reWant Courseware, an AI-narrated video series unpacking the latest lectures and thoughts from Professor Adam Scott Wandt of the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City. We are going to deconstruct exactly how digital forensic investigators separate fact from fiction. We'll examine the tools, techniques, and legal frameworks required to uncover the truth when a suspect intentionally manipulates their own device. It is easy to assume the location data pulled from a smartphone is absolute truth. If a phone logs that a suspect was at a specific client site during billed hours, we are wired to believe it. But for financial fraud investigators, taking that device data at face value creates a massive vulnerability. Adversaries are now using low-cost hardware, like software-defined radios, and commercial devices known as Wi-Fi pineapples. These tools allow a suspect to broadcast false signals and inject fake GPS coordinates and phony Wi-Fi network connections directly into a phone's internal log. To combat this, forensic examiners rely on the mobile evidence trifecta. This framework cross-references three distinct data streams: the physical device, cloud data, and carrier records. An investigator who relies entirely on the physical device risks building their entire case on a sophisticated AI-generated lie. When the device data is compromised, those external cloud and carrier records are what keep the investigation from collapsing. The first pillar is the physical device itself, but you can't just plug in and start reading. The Supreme Court's ruling in Riley specific search warrant before examining the contents of a physical smartphone. Once that device is legally seized, the clock starts. According to current practitioner guidelines, simply switching a modern phone to airplane mode is insufficient. Background radios for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi often remain active and can reconnect behind the scenes. This is why the device must immediately go into a signal-blocking Faraday bag. Physical isolation serves a dual purpose. It prevents the suspect from sending a remote wipe command, and it blocks rogue access points from injecting fake Wi-Fi probe artifacts into the device before it reaches the laboratory. Back in the lab, examiners use extraction tools like ALApp and ILApp to parse the phone's internal databases. On an iOS device, for instance, they'll analyze the Knowledge C database to reconstruct a timeline of application usage and recorded location events. Here is the vulnerability. Traditional location spoofing leaves sloppy anomalies in the GPS data, like static satellite counts. But if a suspect uses AI-assisted tools to generate realistic variants in those NMEA GPS logs, the forensic parsing software will read that data and report a flawless, perfectly constructed lie. The physical device holds the most detailed behavioral footprint available, but it is inherently the most susceptible to software-level forgery and suspect manipulation. That vulnerability brings us to the second pillar, the cloud. The warrant you obtain to search the physical handset does not give you legal authorization to pull iCloud backups or Google location history directly from provider servers. To compel third-party data disclosure from those companies, you must navigate an entirely distinct federal framework known as the Stored Communications Act, and the cloud is currently introducing new forensic complications. Smartphones are increasingly relying on Edge AI, onboard AI assistants that automatically generate secondary summaries of messages, notifications, and user activity. These AI-generated records exist in an active legal gray area. Courts have not yet definitively resolved whether an AI summary of a text message classifies as actual content under the Stored Communications Act, or exactly what legal process is required to obtain it. Cloud records provide a necessary backup when a physical device is locked or filled with spoofed location data, but securing them requires separate, timely legal demands and navigating legislation that hasn't quite caught up to modern AI. When the device is lying and the cloud is tangled in legal process, we turn to the third and most authoritative pillar, the carrier. Carrier records sit at the highest trust tier in the evidence trifecta because these logs are generated by network infrastructure completely independently of the suspect. This image shows a standard 4G LTE cell tower. Older 4G cell site location records are useful, but they lack pinpoint accuracy. In an urban environment, 4G data might only narrow a suspect's location down to a 100 to 500 meter radius. This shows a modern 5G small cell node, and the transition to this architecture changes the dynamic. Under optimal conditions, the dense infrastructure of 5G networks provides examiners with significantly improved, sometimes near meter-level location precision. Accessing this high-precision network data carries its own strict legal boundary. Following the Supreme Court's decision in Carpenter v. United States, investigators must obtain a specific warrant to access historical cell site location information from a carrier. A suspect can easily spoof their GPS coordinates or buy a Wi-Fi pineapple. They cannot manipulate a telecommunications company's cell tower. Carrier records remain the ultimate, objective anchor of truth when everything on the physical phone is suspect. Today, AI triage tools are routinely used to scan device extractions and flag suspicious location clusters. But if an AI tool flags an anomaly, the human examiner has to manually verify that conclusion. If you can't explain the underlying methodology, your evidence will not survive a Daubert admissibility challenge in court. Manual verification means tracing the AI's finding all the way back to the raw source data. You have to check for abnormally short DHCP lease times or verify the BSSID MAC addresses against commercial Wi-Fi positioning databases to prove a network connection actually happened. Let's say you do the manual work. The GPS data on the phone shows perfectly realistic variants, confirming the suspect was at the office. But your 5G carrier record proves the device was connected to a small cell tower 14 miles away. What do? You follow the hierarchy of independent corroboration. Because the carrier record is generated outside the suspect's control, it always overrides the manipulated device log. In a time and attendance fraud investigation, a spoofed GPS signal serves as affirmative proof of criminal intent. It documents the exact moment a suspect took deliberate, technical steps to falsify the records their employer relied on. Like, follow, and subscribe for more deep dives into emerging technology, digital investigations, and the ideas shaping our future. And remember, stay curious and want knowledge.